Hello everyone, welcome back to the grammar lessons for VRC 1000. Today we are going to do the lesson 5, which deals with verbs and their classifications. I'm sure you know what are the types of verbs, but verbs play a very integral role in all our understanding. Verb is the existence of the entity, so it is a very, very important word in a sentence. And also in our competitive exams, I have seen a lot of questions being asked about around the verbs. So today's lesson is a linking lesson to the upcoming two lessons, which is about tenses and subject verb agreement, which are often the very focus of major focus, let me say, of our competitive exams. But today's lecture and lesson is about understanding the vividness of the verbs, the gerunds, participles, infinitives, how are the main verbs classified, what are linking verbs, what's the subtle difference between the usage of them, because often I have seen exams like MyCat and the snap specifically turning some questions around phrasal verbs and the gerunds and participle usage. So be careful. That is what the agenda of this lesson is. So the fourfold agenda is about understanding what are the types of verbs. So verb, a basic classification, that is what we are going to do. Understand the subtle difference between infinitives, participles, and the gerunds. So they are one cluster that is often confused, and we should know about them. The type of dynamic verbs, what are the further classifications of the dynamic verbs, like transitive, intransitive, definite, indefinite, regular, irregular. So all these kind of things that you might be understanding or reading somewhere around in the explanations and might have a problem understanding. So I'm going to explain that, and then we'll look at the exercise that I have in the verbs and types worksheet that we will solve. So without much ado, let's get started with today's video. Now, there are 5 major kinds of verbs. We have something called as dynamic verbs. We have something called as stative verbs. We have something called as linking verbs. We have something called as helping verbs. And we have something also called as phrasal verbs. Now, here I'm linking a thing to the verbal logic sessions that I've recorded. I have given you in the vocabulary sessions in my Google Drive link. If you find that video, if you're unable to find the Google Drive link, you can just text me on the Telegram and I'll forward you the Google Drive link. I have given some 50 very important phrasal verbs list. So I've created and curated that specifically with respect to the competitive examinations, keeping in mind that at least those 50 very commonly used words that you need to know, because these all exams ask those kind of words. So this is more or less learning part, rest of things that we'll try to understand. So please refer to that. If you are unable to find, please let me know. I will send you the Google Drive. In my vocabulary drive, you will also find the phrasal verb list. Now, so we'll look at the dynamics of all these verbs. I think in my parts of speech lesson also, I basically told you upon hinting out that there are these two kind of verbs, the two kind of existence that we have is divided into, because verbs denote the existence of the entities. So therefore, the existence is divided into basic two clusters, the dynamic and the stative. Dynamic, basically the action, events, or the process which animate objects can work, which living things can work. Stative, again, with the states of beings, feelings, or emotive states or emotions are something that is more or less described again for the living beings with the stative verbs. Linking verbs, link the non-action verbs, they just basically link up the adjectives or adverbs or any other noun complement. So they are semi-stative, they connect adjectives and so on and so forth. Helping verbs, we know, is, are, am, when they help the main verb. So they are further divided into causative, something that caused something to happen, moral, which is about permission, willingness, and then auxiliaries, which are the basic helping verbs which denote the tense, like has, have, is, ing forms of the verbs, and passives, has been, and so on and so forth. So we look at their dynamics today. So it's going to be a lot of knowledge on the verbs. So just be careful and attend it and listen to it carefully. So dynamic verbs, also known as action verbs or event verbs. These are the type of verbs that represent physical action or process. A large percentage of these verbs are easy to identify because they occur externally. Additionally, dynamic verbs can be defined as motivated actions that have a clear beginning and an end. They refer to physical actions that are performed with bodies or objects. Samantha has discussed the details with the team. Cole accidentally gave the documents to the wrong person. So, however, some dynamic do not occur externally. They describe the mental or the internal actions as well. For example, the team had to endure. So, to endure becomes my infinitive, and endure as a dynamic verb. I needed to consider. Can you guess my favorite number? Help, and help non-physically. So, is something that we can add, that even there are some things that do not occur and they are still treated as dynamic verbs. Again, nobody is going to ask you classification, so don't stress. This is just upon a brush of a little gyan that you should have while dealing with the questions of the questions and explanations sometimes with respect to the competitive exams. Stative verbs, the opposite. Stative verbs describe the states of being. As the name suggests, stative, they tell the state of being of the existence, like to be or to particularly have it. These verbs also express a feeling, like I love, or a physical state that there was. Unlike dynamic verbs, stative verbs tend to be subjective and have no definite start or end. They usually describe qualities, states of existence, opinions, belief, emotions. Stative verbs tell us about the state of mind. Example, Roxanne appears frustrated. I hated the presentation. So it's a feeling, it's a quality that you have in your mind. So it's more about mental things. I have known about that for a while. Unlike dynamic verbs, stative verbs cannot be used in ing forms. Okay, so a very interesting rule. Where an exception is the McDonald's tagline, which is "I'm loving it," is actually grammatically wrong. Okay, because love is a stative thing, so it should actually grammatically be it's implying that I love it, but it is trying to transform it. So please remember, for example, you can't say Roxanne is appearing frustrated. That's wrong usage. Okay, Roxanne appears frustrated is the correct usage. He is wanting to speak with them. Often in a vocal senses and verbal senses, we use it, but verbally fine, but vocationally fine, but formal writing will not accept. It will always show you an error. So he wants to speak with them. So keep that rule in mind, that stative verbs are not in ing form. So hearing, I'm hearing a sound is perfectly fine, but hearing, seeing, and so on and so forth. So seeing someone is a phrasal verb. When it means I'm dating, it means to date somebody. But keep that in mind, that I cannot use progressive forms or continuous forms of the stative verb. So what are progressive forms and what are all other forms? Stay tuned. In the next lecture, I'm going to deal with tenses, so where we will discuss all these things. So just watch the video after this. The lesson 6 is going to deal with tenses and all the tenses of active voice and the passive voice. Let's look at the linking verbs. What are linking verbs? Linking verbs are verbs that link the subject to a word or a phrase and that describes or identifies the subject, so properly to any adjective or any noun complement or a noun phrase. They do not denote an action. Okay, they are not an action words. They describe further the subject. So consider the following sentences. For example, Lisa is mother of 2 children. So what is she? This sentence is linking it. It is not known as helping verb, because helping verbs help the main verb, or helping verbs help facilitate the main verb. But this is not. This dress looks pretty. So it's not denoting any action. This is looking is not the action in this case. So I'm looking at a scenery. I'm looking at an object. Looking is an action. But here this dress looks pretty. It is a linking verb because it connects the adjective. Okay, my mother is a teacher. She felt sick. Okay, so in all these examples, you need to underline noun or the noun phrase. So sick, teacher, pretty is the adjective, 2 children are the noun phrases. As subject complement, Therefore, we can deduce that linking verbs is a verb that links the subject and the subject complement. That's what I said, that it links up the noun or the noun phrase or subject to any other thing. And therefore, what are the features that do not indicate any action? Link the subject to the words or the phrases that describe or identify the subjects, which basically means adjectives or adverbial usage. They are followed by subject complements, right? Is obviously looks what? Looks pretty. So they cannot take a direct object. So because they have no action, they cannot take a direct object. So some common linking verbs include be, am, is, are, was, were, feel, look, appear. Just keep this in mind as a nothing to be, you should not mug it up, but keep that in mind that linking verbs are often confused with helping verbs. So I should be able to identify that whenever a sentence says what is linking and what is helping, I should know the difference. What are helping verbs? Helping verbs help the main verb. They help facilitate the main verb to express an action or the state of being. Helping verbs are also known as auxiliary verbs. These add extra information. So why auxiliary? Auxiliary add extra information to the main verb, such as time and tense. So basically they give aspects of that action. Okay, they provide us these aspects of the action. So Jean is doing her homework. Jean has done her homework. So your is and has is actually trying to tell that what is the aspect of the action. In the second case, the work is completed. Tenses we'll do in the next class, so don't stress. Jean is doing her homework. So this is a progressive form. This is a continuous form. So she's doing the homework when the observer is observing her. Okay. The first example indicates an action in progress, but the second example shows a completed action, as I said. Helping verbs help to indicate tense, grammatical aspect, that is what type of action is this. Is it completed action? Is it progressive action? It is about perfect continuous and so on and so forth. The modality, what is the mode, and the voice, is it a active voice, it is a passive voice, etc. Helping verbs are also helpful in forming questions and negations. For example, she did not like him. They are not helping us. Has she completed the project? So there are three common type of helping verbs. We have forms of be, which we use is, am, are, was, were, been, being. Accordingly, passives and actives. We'll deal with the next class. Have, we have, has, had, and having. And then we have forms of do, which is do, does, and did. So keep in mind the difference. I've just pointed towards the difference. Linking verbs link main verbs in the sentences. They link, but helping verbs are not the main verbs in the sentence. So linking verbs are main verbs, but helping verbs are not the main verbs. They are followed by the subject complement. They are followed by the main verb. They link the subject. They add extra information to the action. They are used to describe or identify the subject. For example, the sun is beautiful. So it is basically trying to tell me, it is used to describe how is the sun beautiful. So it is linking the adjective, the noun, and the noun complement, which is beautiful. They are used to express an action or a state of being. For example, I am teaching verbs right now. So teaching is the main verb, and then am is the helping verb, which is facilitating. Who is it helping? It will always help the main verb. So helping verbs, easy to identify. Let's move ahead. Causative verbs indicate that these are persons or thing is causing another action to occur to something or someone. Common causative action verbs are let, allow, permit, make, force, require, get, have, help, and keep. Some of these verbs have similar meanings, but they differ in their formality and the sentence exchange. What is formality? We'll discuss in the modal verbs shortly. It's about that how formal or informally or obligation or willingness or permission are you seeking. So that are the formalities of the sentences. Causative verbs are followed by an object and another verb form. If you're confused between subject and object, please go to the lesson 1 building blocks, which I've declared. What is a subject, what is a predicate, what is an object, what is direct object, what is indirect object, determiners, modifiers, and so on and so forth. The second verb is often the base root of the verb, an infinitive, to followed by a base root. For example, have, take, get, make, let. Examples of the causative verbs. The president had the vice president lead the new dam project. So the president caused it. You had me called, so you caused me. Right? I got my parents, so I caused my parents to buy me something. So causative. Just a fancier name, don't stress. She got the teacher to dismiss, so she caused the teacher to dismiss. Okay? Vivid usage, a vivid nomenclature, that's it. Modals, very important one. Auxiliary verbs add grammatical function and the meaning to the clause in which they are used. They can be used to express aspect, as I said, the continuation form or the indefinite form, and so on and so forth. Voices, the active voice, the passive voice. Tenses, where did the action exactly take place? For example, I have read. So auxiliaries do these things, but modals also fall in the category of auxiliary, but they indicate the modality of things. What is the modality? The formality of things. For example, they are used to express certainties, ability, willingness of things, necessity, permission, obligation, advice, and possibilities. For instance, Mary might come tomorrow. Might is a modal verb and shows that there is a likelihood of a Mary coming tomorrow or not. There are 13 modal commonly: can, could, shall, should, will, would, may, might, must, dare, need, used to, ought to. So obviously these are the will, would, are, may, mights are the latter forms, are the pasts of the present, which is the first one. Depending on what meaning they express, they have 5 major types of modal verbs. Modal denoting ability, for example, can and could. So I can speak 4 language. Modals expressing permission, can and may. May I open the window? May is a more formal and can is a more informal one. Modals for likelihood, for example, will, might, may, can, could. So it may rain, it could rain, it might rain, and so on and so forth. Modals denoting obligation, must and have to. For example, you must do your homework, you must learn these, you have to learn these rules. Modals for giving advice, you should remember. So I'm just giving you an advice that you should remember or you should stop smoking. So I hope you remember modals basically about these things: certainty, ability, willingness, necessity, permissions, obligations, advices, and denoting possibilities of things. Let's move ahead. What are phrasal verbs? Again, as I said, phrasal verbs as a whole list I have given, a very 50 commonly used phrasal verbs. I've created a list in the vocab. You just have to mug it all up. Phrasal verbs are also verbs which combination of the verb with preposition or an adverb and have different meaning. They give you unique meanings of things. For example, abide by means to respect or to obey a decision. If you want to keep your job, you must abide by the rules. Account for means to explain or give a reason. So I hope you can account for the time that you were out. Add up means to make sense. The facts in this case just don't add up. So means up. So there's no logic to it. It's just rote learning that you need to do it. Advise against, recommend not doing something. So I advise against walking alone in the neighborhood. So there are 2 types: separable and non-separable. For example, they have called the meeting off. So it's a separable phrasal verb. You can fill this form in. Okay, I can pick you up, but then there are non-separable. You can't say I came your mail across. So I came across your mail. Who looks after the baby? Who came up with that idea? Let's get rid of. So you can't say let's get rid these old magazines of, or OFF, and so on and so forth. So non-separable creates an error. There might be a chance. Just look at certain phrasal verbs which are non-separable. Just keep them in mind. Looking forward to. You can't just looking forward for the content or to the content. Okay, you can't use for. You have to use looking forward to the concept. So non-separable phrasal verbs, but this is more or less the rotes learning that you need to do, and therefore I will advise that you should start learning certain phrasal verbs. Any grammar book will have, Renan Martin for example, have good phrasal verbs that you can learn, at least the basic common ones, if you do not have any idea or if you just want to brush up. The verb phrase consists of main verb. What is the verb phrase? Just add on, the verb phrase is a main verb, not the main verb alone, a main verb phrase, any modal or an auxiliary verb, and the main verb always comes last in the verb phrase. For example, we all laughed. So laughed is the main verb. Computers can be. So this can be is the verb phrase, but can is the modal. So MO stands for the modal and MV stands for the main verb. And the whole entire thing is a verb phrase. So can be is a verb phrase. The apartment would have cost. So would modal, have auxiliary because have is adding to the cost, so have cost less than a hotel. You might have been waiting, verb phrase. Might modal, have been auxiliary because it is helping the main verb which is waiting outside for you. Simple verb phrases. Simple verb phrase consists of main verb. Verb is a simple verb phrase, shows the type of clause or declarative or imperative. For example, your camera takes fantastic pictures. It's a present simple declarative clause. Dress smartly, arrive on time. It's an imperative. Imperative, command. So just a certain theory, that part of it, nothing very important, so don't stress. Complex verb phrases. Complex verb phrase may include one modal verb and may or may be more than one auxiliary verb. Therefore, main verbs always comes before an auxiliary verb. So house prices could fall during the next 6 months. So modal plus main verb. You may have played this game before. So modal may have auxiliary and then played main verb. The work should have been finished. So entire verb phrase. Let's move to the next. What is gerunds, participles, and infinitives? What is a gerund? A gerund is a word like swimming in a sentence. When I say I have always enjoyed swimming. Now, what is special about this sentence? This sentence is not saying swimming is an action, but this is saying swimming is a thing. Swimming is an activity. And therefore, swimming here is actually acting like a noun, an entity. Okay, an activity in itself. A gerund usually refers to a general way to the activity represented by the verb. So just keep this in mind. It is derived from swimming. Swimming means an activity of swimming in general, not a specific instance of swimming. For example, when I was swimming in, so it's a specific instance of swimming, and then swimming is in this case, swimming becomes a verb or a main verb. And the ing form will therefore show a progressive verb. Gerunds are different from other nouns in that they can be modified by adverbials, like I enjoy swimming in the sea. So in the sea is the adverbial phrase of the swimming, that where did you enjoy? In the sea. So it's a adverb of place. Okay, acting here, adverb of place, and can take direct object like playing my guitar. So playing is an activity. Playing what? Playing my guitar. So this is my noun, and then it's followed by an object. So my guitar always lasts. Cycling is fun. So just remember, gerunds, verbs used as nouns, they can also be called as verbal nouns. Yeah, nouns पांच ही तरीके के होते हैं, guys. Please remember the ones I have told you in the lesson 3, nouns and pronouns जब हमने किया था, but I've recorded that, so you can go back. But this is just a noun, special kind of a noun where we treat a verb like a noun. The cycling is a fun activity. I am in a habit of writing every day, meditating. So all of these are denoting particularly things as an activity. What is a gerund phrase? A whole phrase headed by a gerund, including anything that it modifies. Okay. So, for example, he doesn't enjoy reading. So, reading as an activity is the verb, but then reading magazine is a gerund phrase. I wonder what makes reading fiction. So, reading is a gerund, and then fiction is the object complement that it is taking, like my guitar. So, okay, so the object, therefore, noun. So noun and noun, yeah, crazy, but yeah, you need to keep them in mind. A participle, oh, this is also very interesting. A participle is a verb or a verbal form which is word based off a verb that expresses a state of being ending in the ing, that is present tense, or ed, en, d, t, n, or any past tense which denotes a past tense that functions as an adjective, which is very interesting. So when a verb acts like an adjective, it is called as a participle. This means it needs to modify or describe a noun or a pronoun. Present participle example, the crying baby. So how was the baby? The baby was crying. So the crying baby. So crying is not a gerund. This is not a noun here. This is definitely acting like a adjective. Why? Because it is telling more information about the baby, which is a noun. The wrecked car. Okay. The wrecked therefore becomes a participle. So it is wreck. I'll give you a better example. I'll say, okay, the less walked road. Okay, road is the noun. Walk is actually an action, but again, it's not an action because here you're using it to modify, to tell what type of road. So this actually acts like an adjective. And then less is how walked, what is the degree? So an adverb of degree. So less walked road. Okay. So if you have to sound both like an adjective, you have to put a hyphen, and then the less walked completely becomes a adjective. So nuances that you should remember, and everything links back to the lesson 2, which is parts of speech. So if you're fundamentally not able to grasp what is this, what I'm talking about, is the usage that differentiates what part of speech a particular thing has played. So please go back, remember them, because gerunds, infinitives, and participles are going to be very confusing if you do not understand the role or the functionality of the sentence. Okay, so a participle phrase is a group of words containing a participle, modifier, and a pronoun or a noun. The pronoun or a noun will act as a recipient of the action in the phrase. So you need a comma after a participle. That's a very, very important rule. This we will discuss in our lesson 8 as well, which I'll deal with modifiers, because modifiers is the most painful chapter of all our competitive exams, including the GMAT. IFT used to love modifier questions. ZAT still loves modifier questions. I've seen MICAT asking questions based on modifiers. So modifiers is the most important chapter, and it is never dealt in school. So therefore, automatically becomes something that not a school person will be definitely acquainted to. So please remember modifiers. Now, what are modifiers in general? I've just again took up a building block session, the very first lesson plan, which gave all these forms. So please watch it. I think you'll get a adequate idea upon what are determiners, what are modifiers, and so on and so forth. So phrase, if it comes in the beginning of a sentence, so if a participle phrase is used in the beginning, it is definitely separated by a comma. If there is no comma, it will be creating an error, a grammatical error. So participle that comes in middle or the end do not need a comma. For example, look at this one, removing his coat, comma. If a comma is not here, it will be considered a very, very big mistake, because then it will seem that who is removed the coat is not given. So removing his coat, comma, Jack rushed to the river. So participle removing, whole sentence, Jack, verb, rushed. Okay, so participle followed by the subject complement, which is the his coat. A participle phrase in this sentence is removing his coat, which is at the beginning of the sentence, and the whole sentence is followed, so a comma is needed. But if the sentence is in middle or the end, then no comma is needed. For example, Dolores noticed her cousin walking along the shoreline. Now, walking along the shoreline is towards the end, and therefore no comma is needed. You can't say Dolores noticed her cousin, comma, walking along the shoreline, then that is particularly wrong. So if you unnecessarily placed a comma, that is a redundant comma. So you are making an error of redundancy. So while walking along the shoreline is the participle phrase, which is at the end. So it should be with no comma is needed. So interesting rules. We'll revise them in the modalities, in the modifiers chapter, sorry. An infinitive verb, what is an infinitive? Infinitive verb is a verb that takes a to before the base form, like to make, to bring, to exercise. And it is a term also used to refer to a base verb that does not function as a verb. Please remember, Infinitives sometimes do not function as a verb, and these are called as bare infinitives sometimes. In English, an infinitive is used by itself. For example, she can swim. Now, understand, here swim again is an infinitive. Why? Because he actually, again, swim is referring to swimming as an activity, but you are not using the word swimming, because if you use the word swimming, it would have been a gerund. Okay, but you are here using she can swim again as an activity. So swim is an infinitive here, and it is used to called as a bare infinitive. It does not need to have to. Actually, this would be better that she likes to swim. So you, if it's modal, I'm using she can swim, so I'm expressing the ability to swim. So bare infinitive, full infinitive, bare infinitives are verbs that are used in their base forms and do not function as a verb. Okay, here swim is not a verb because swimming is not telling you an instance. They occur after verbs such as see, watch, hear, and feel, and also after modal verbs such as need, can, should, must, may, might, would, could, and will. So modal, see, can is a modal. Full infinitives, these are easier to recognize. These are two infinitives, are the verbs that take to before it. They do not function as a verb. For example, I want to see you cook. So cook is a bare infinitive, and want is the main verb, but to see is again the activity of seeing. I can't use seeing, so obviously wrong gerund form. Stative verbs are not used in the ing forms. So I want to see you cook. Best example to remember, having bare infinitive, having both a full infinitive and a bare infinitive. You'll see that there are three actions in this: want, see, and cook. Among these, which one do you think is the main verb? Obviously, want is the main verb, and to see is the full infinitive, and cook is the bare infinitive. So what's the quick difference between them? Gerunds acts like noun, participles acts like adjective, and infinitives acts like everything. Infinitives acts like adverb. They can act like noun and adjectives too. The base form of the verb, which is addition of ing. So gerunds are always with ing forms. Listening to music while working. Okay, she spends her free time gardening as an activity, and usually more or less are activities. Participles used as adjectives, the base form with ing as present participle, ded is past participle at the end of a regular verb, and the past participle of the irregular verb. What are irregular, regular? I'm just going to deal shortly in the next few slides, so just keep tight. They have all learned, so a past participle. About defense techniques, Tina is going to the airport. Okay, so again a present participle. These are challenging chapters of grammar, challenging, so you're using present participle again, that you're telling it using as an adjective. Okay, infinitives, the base form bare infinitive or the to full infinitive. I was planning to move. So planning, main verb, was auxiliary verb, to move infinitive but a full infinitive. We have been waiting to see you play. Play again is an activity. So using this as a noun but not as a ing, so not a gerund, and therefore a bare infinitive. Then to see obviously is a seeing activity, so infinitive. I hope this table summarizes and clears your queries upon what's the difference between a gerund participle and an infinitive. Let's move ahead. Let's move ahead to the types of dynamic. As I said, what are the main verbs classified into? They are, two of them are usage dependent, which is I can use any kind of main verb for a transitive type. I can use any main verb intransitively. I can use any main verb definitely or finitely, or I can use any of the main verb as indefinitely or infinitely. Then there are also verbs that I have to respect the form of it, which is regular form and irregular form. What are they? I'm going to quickly explain. Then let me take you an example. For example, the boy kicks the football. In this, kick is the main action. Okay, and the kick is the main verb, and there is a doer, there is an actor here, there is an agent, which is the subject, and then there is the football, which is an object. So here the verb kicks passes from the subject. So whenever a verb passes over, what is the trick to remember it? Passing over is also called transit. When you order something, it shows in transit. In transit means it is transferred from one hub to another hub. So it's in transit. It's therefore the verb which passes over to an object. What is an object? An object is always the thing that receives the action. Okay, so the receiver of an action. Okay, so subject. So from the subject to an object is what is called as a transitive verb. So what are intransitive? That actions which will not pass. For example, if we say he laughed, the boy laughs loudly. Loudly is the adverb here, but there is no object. Nobody is receiving the laugh, and therefore this is intransitive. Why am I calling it intransitive? Because it does not pass over. Okay, so I've mentioned it very clearly. Transitive, a verb that denote an action that passes from the doer or the subject to an object, and an intransitive are a verb that denotes usually the action that don't pass or which expresses a state. For example, if we say he's weird, okay, so he sleeps as an activity. So I'm just telling to he sleeps. So intransitive. He ran, intransitive. But he ran on the road, transitive. He sleeps on the bed, transitive. So very simple, and I can use it again. These are dynamics, these are not fixed. We can use them. Let's look at regular, irregular. What is the next classification? The regular and regular is of form. So what are regular verbs? Regular verbs are used ed or ed to form the base tense and the past participle. Like walk is the base form, walked, walked, kick, kicked, kicked, point, pointed, pointed. But irregular ones do not use ed. Okay, they don't use ed, but not by adding the ed. For example, in this case, see, cut, you can't say cutted, cutted. You can't say sing, singed, singed. It's sing, sang, sung, ring, rang, rung, sit, sat, sat. So all those that do not require ed, so no ed, are irregular, while ed are the regular ones. So again, this is a form, this is not on usage. You cannot use anything you feel like. You can't create these. These are forms we have to respect. These do not depend upon the usage. However, the next classification is dependent upon the usage. For example, let's consider the sentence. All my students want to clear competitive exams. Now, if I change this to one of my student, this verb changes. This will now become wants. Why it will change, what are the laws regarding it, is what is called as subject verb agreement. I have the lesson 7 on it, which is subject verb agreement. Please watch it very carefully. It is not that whatever sounds good should be the clear subjects. We have to follow certain rules while forming the formal written English. So just keep that in mind, and this is one of the hint. When a singular subject, it requires a singular verb. So wants is the singular verb, and one of my student is also a singular noun. So noun requiring a singular verb. But to clear doesn't change, because to clear is the infinitive, is the full infinitive, it's the infinitive form of the verb. So infinitives and gerunds or participles, sometimes they denote They do not define. What do they do not define? They do not define a tense, a number, or a person of the subject or the object that they are referring to. Right? For example, too clear will never tell me that the student wants or wanted. If I just change it in the past tense, see what changed? Wanted change. Too clear will still not change. Now, with respect to the person, for example, if I say he wants, but you want, again, too clear, too clear. So, kind of nothing is happening to too clear. Too clear seems too clear, right? But this guy is changing. So, whatever verbs that change are actually called as definite verbs. Why definite? Because they define. What are they defining? They're defining a tense, a clear number, or a clear person. And what kind of person is this? This is third person, this is second person. So second person के साथ we use first person and second person के साथ we use plurals. So it denotes person. So and that which do not change is what is called as a indefinite. This guy that doesn't change, so I have written which doesn't change are referred to as indefinite. Okay, that don't change with a tense, number, or person are indefinite. So just keep that in mind. Auxiliaries and something that we have already done. So I hope that you'll compile this, accumulate all of this. Even if you have to watch the video twice, please do watch it, because this is going to be significantly useful in all the subsequent sessions, which is subject verb agreement, tenses, and modifiers errors. So just make some space for it, and then just pay attention to the verbs. Okay, let's practice the exercise that I've given you, a comparatively easier exercise. So Sarah wished her new doll as a dynamic verb or a stative verb. It's actually a dynamic verb. It's actually a stative verb, sorry. It wished is not an action happening, right? So it's an action which is mental. So stative. You must be happy. Modal or linking. It's linking. Why? Because it is linking to the adjective happy. So you must be happy with such a good news. Michelle looks great today. It's linking, yes, adjective, not dynamic. She is looking great, dynamic. Okay, because then you are using auxiliary verb, looking, then as a main verb, and then great. She is looking great today, dynamic. You need a bigger car, transitive or intransitive. What are transitive? Transit passes over to an object. So you need a bigger car. Car is an object. What do you need? Subject. What does subject need? Verb. So it has an object. So transitive. Which of them are irregular verbs? I think let's recall sing, sang, sung. So sing, sang, sung is irregular. Okay, regular verbs have ed. Irregular verbs do not use ed. No ed. Write, wrote, written. So this is irregular. Dance, danced, danced. So this is not, this is regular. Cheer, cheered, cheered. Regular. Love, loved, loved. Regular. Run, run, run. Run, ran, run. Irregular. I think in your exercise there was a forgot also. So forget, forgot, forgotten will be also irregular. This is also irregular. Okay, now we have to identify what is eating cinnamon rolls makes me happy? So is it a participle or is it a gerund? Is it an activity? Eating cinnamon rolls makes me happy. So that's the main verb. So eating acts like a gerund. There's an activity followed by a cinnamon rolls and a subject complement. Okay, that's a noun. So eating what as an activity? So definitely a gerund. They call Amy a walking dictionary. Dictionary is the noun. So walking acting like an adjective and therefore a participle. Definitely not a noun, not an activity. I like working out. So I like an activity, a thing. I like something as an entity and therefore a participle. My bad. Therefore as a gerund. So it's a thing is an activity. I want to buy, definitely an infinitive, not a modal. You may go, definitely a modal, not a phrase. So I hope easier ones. Just keep in mind, just brush up. I believe it's not a difficult thing to do. Let's look at the that question. How these concepts are asked in exam. Look at the first question. Beautiful question. The tremendous insight of Einstein that the passage of time does not appear to be the same while standing still. Now, while standing still is acting like a gerund. While standing still. Activity, it's acting like a gerund, which is wrong because then it is to a person. So to a person is standing still. So I should rather while standing will considered wrong because it's gerund. Similarly, here is while standing wrong, gerund. So to a person, yes. To a person standing, verb. To a person standing, verb. To a person who is standing, unnecessary relative pronoun added. So it's just verbose. Also, it is missing a to. As to a person. So it's a rule of parallelism as well. What is parallelism? Very important chapter. I have dealt it in lesson 8, the parallelism and modifiers. Please refer to it because it's some of the most important chapters asked in ZAT and MyCat. So third is gone. I think third is going to be wrong because this is standing to a person standing as to a person who travels. Again, parallelism is missing. So traveling should be the correct one because this is ing form. Okay, progressive. So traveling hona chahiye tha. This is again a parallelism error. So therefore this is wrong. Therefore the correct sentence becomes second. To a person standing still, main verb, as to a person traveling. So look at the balance structure. To a person standing still, as to a person traveling. Perfectly fine. So second sentence is the correct answer. Question second, Snap 2015 question. Beautiful question. American executives, unlike Japanese counterparts, have pressure to show. Okay, have pressure to show. Now, to show is okay because that's an infinitive signature. Okay, and we have another, are pressured to show. So is the feeling is actually the pressure. They are put under pressure or they are pressured to do. So have pressure, under pressure, so they are pressured will be actually wrong usage. Right? There is nothing as pressured because now you're making it as a participle. They're pressured toward and that to wrong phrasal verb. Okay? Pressured to is the correct form. Okay, so pressure off is also wrong. This is wrong phrasal verb. So this is gone. So they have pressure or they are under pressure. So I think because to show is perfectly fine because that's the infinitive signature. We will not be using showing here, which is now pressure of showing. Off showing is like an activity which is using you as a gerund. So you are using wrong phrase and wrong. Here gerund forms is not going to work. The noun as an activity is not going to be dealt. So this is wrong. Now between 1 and 2, have pressure and are under pressure. I think are under pressure clearly have. So they have pressure to show. They are under pressure to show. Second is a more clear and unambiguous form. Next question. The matter was referred back to the expert committee. So it's the expert committee. We just can't omit the expert, which was actually omitted in here, fourth. So fourth is missing expert here. So can't become the answer. Now referred to or referred back. I think referred back is a wrong phrasal usage. Okay, referred to is the correct usage. You can't separate this. This is inseparable. Okay, inseparable phrase. So you can't say referred back to or referred back to. Okay, it will be referred to. So this is incorrect. Therefore, automatically the correct answer is the second one, refer to expert committee, since the solution to the problem was different from the one proposed earlier. That's perfect. The rest of the sentence was fine. Look at this one. In an attempt to destroy. So in attempting to destroy, see, very tempting sentences. In attempting to destroy, this is not gerund, no? This is not an activity in usual attempting to destroy things as a general activity. No. So wrong gerund usage. Okay. Now in attempt of destroying, so it's again wrong phrase. Attempt of नहीं होता. यहाँ verb अच्छा है, तो this is main verb की तरह. In an attempt of destroying, but an attempt of नहीं होता. Attempt to destroy. So that's the wrong phrasal verb usage. So gone. This is gone. Narrowed down to an attempt to destroy them with completeness. Hilarious. What is completeness? You're actually trying to say in a complete manner, right? You're trying to depict the manner. So use an adverb. Adverb of manner, which is completely. So perfectly, third is going to become the correct answer. Completeness here was wrong. Okay. Here the verb was correct, but then attempt of wrong phrasal verb. So look at the details that they are checking. Phrasal verbs, the wrong usage of gerund, inseparable phrasal verb. So all that I've taught you is very relevant to these exams. Next one, again, a question on the wrong usage of gerund and a phrasal verb. For example, let's look at persistent problems. So here it is problem. So persistent problems नहीं हो सकता, इसलिए first is gone. And then with setting up of. Okay, the correct phrase is setting up, not off. Redundant. Setting up itself means to set up something. Okay, set up of. Setting up of. Okay, sorry, not set up of. My bad. Okay. So this will be wrong. Setting up. Set up hota hai, to set up. So this is the wrong phrasal verb. Setting up of hoga. So this was right, but because of the problems, this was wrong. So now we have setting up of. Setting up of. Okay. Now we have to check what is wrong with this. So as I told you, all these questions you should go vertically, scan vertically. So a persistent problem with is correct. Setting up of is correct. Special zones is that the people displaced are not properly compensated and rehabilitated. Here he says the people displacing. Oh, he's using a gerund. Okay, there is no use of gerund. People displacing. No. So correct answer will be the setting up of and displaced, compensated, rehabilitated. Perfectly fine. So a very good question on gerund and participle usage. and phrasal verb. So I hope you understand that this is important. So before we end, let's quickly recap. If you were paying attention, guys, what you did understand today is upon the classification or the sub-classification of the most important word in a sentence, which is the verb. So there are dynamic verbs that denote events or actions. There are stative verbs that denote states of being, feelings or emotions. There are linking verbs that link the subject to an adjective or a subject complement. There are helping verbs which help facilitate the main verb to in a certain external way. Phrasal verbs are verbs which prepositions attached to them, which gives them a unique meaning. Gerunds are verbs used as nouns. Infinitives are verbs used with to, and participles are verbs used as adjectives, and infinitives can be used as all of them. Main verbs are further classified into transitive, intransitive, definite, indefinite. The one that passes over, the one doesn't passes over. Definite, which defines a clear tense, number, and person. So TNP. And indefinite doesn't define the TNP. Regular, we use ED, and the non-regular, we do not use. So that's all for today's class. In the next class, we will definitely be learning the tenses and the type, the all type of active tenses, the passive tenses, what are the very important questions asked with respect to the tenses, and then we will also understand one very exclusive and a very short thing about mood. There are three kinds of basic mood in English grammar, but the subjunctive mood is often asked in our competitive exam. So we should have a brief idea upon the subjunctive mood, and that is what the target of the next class is going to be. That's all from my side, guys. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video.